interactive, and responsive. And we have the honor to do this through our partnership programs like Civic Bridge that brings in teams of skilled volunteers from private sector partners who work alongside our city staff on tactical issues. And we're so incredibly grateful for you all to join us today to help us celebrate this last cohort's accomplishments. And we cannot wait to share the work that they've done around equity with all of you. So thank you again for making the time to join us virtually. We're so excited to be able to share this with so many of you near and far. And then I have the great honor to introduce our keynote speaker very shortly, Administrator Chu, and we're so delighted to have her be able to participate and help kick off the festivities for today. We'll be joining with her in just a moment, but again, just wanted to thank everyone, welcome you. Thank you again for making time this afternoon to join us through our Civic Bridge program and have an opportunity for us to share and highlight what can really happen through collaborations, which is a really strong part of the ethos of the work that our team does. And just a brief thank you to Matt and Jane from our team who helped make this event possible. Great, and I believe Administrator Chu is with us now virtually, so I am so honored to have her kick off and welcome everyone. Thank you so much.
See, I've got to get myself off of mute for just a moment. I hope everybody is doing well and having a great day so far. My name is Carmen Chu. I serve as San Francisco's newest city administrator. By way of background for folks who may not know, I previously served as San Francisco's elected assessor and have actually just started in this new role as city administrator about a little bit more than 2 months ago now. So it's been a very quick transition with a lot of exciting things. And I'm so excited today to be able to welcome you and to really give some opening greetings as we start and kick off this Civic Bridge Showcase. I think when I think about public service, for me, I've been in public service for about 16 years now, and I started off in the city first as an analyst working under then Mayor Gavin Newsom's administration, and eventually became his deputy director of budget and finance. Eventually, I came on the board of supervisors and served as an elected member of the legislative body of the city and county of San Francisco. I then became an assessor, elected assessor for the city, overseeing a department of 200 plus individuals who had a pretty important mission in terms of ensuring that our property tax base, one of the largest revenue sources for the city, was handled correctly, well, and that we were really maximizing all of the technology, the improvements, the skills that we had to bring to bear to it. And when I think about all of these different roles that I have been in, the honest truth is that the thing that drives me, and I think the thing that probably drives you and so many people across the city, is just this desire to serve and to solve really hard problems. There is no shortage of difficult and challenging problems that exist in our country and in our city, whether we're talking about how to connect people who are from disadvantaged communities to vaccinations, or to housing, or to a whole host of different services, whether we're trying to solve the issue of how do we improve street sanitation and conditions, whether we're trying to deal and tackle with the issue of how do we create more affordable housing, how do we limit or how do we reduce the expense that we see in permitting and some of the challenges that we see in those processes. There are no, again, shortage of difficult questions, difficult solutions that we need to come up with in order to help improve public services generally for people. And so, again, I think the thing that is most satisfying in all of my roles has just been how do you bring all of the best minds together in order to bridge these gaps, in order to make sure that we put the best ideas forward out there. Because at the end of the day, when we can deliver good services, when we can actually make a difference, what we see is that we impact very directly the lives of our citizens and the people around us. San Francisco is a place where we set the trends for the rest of the nation to follow. And when we do things right, you see models replicated time and time again across the country. And so I couldn't think of a more important partnership than the Civic Bridge partnership here. This is an opportunity for us to really bring to bear not only the passion and the people that we have within our city government to solve some of these large challenges of the day, but to work in collaboration with our partners all across the city in the private sector as well. You bring to the table a lot of different ideas, perspectives about how we might want to approach some of the public policy challenges that we have. And we also bring to bear what it means to actually operationalize and to solve and be working through some of these challenges head on. And so we really value the partnership that you have brought to the table here. The other thing that I think is so exciting about this program, and I'm so glad that you have all joined us here, is just the idea about really trying to put our heads together to create tangible results for the city. I mean, we're talking about real things that help to move the dial for folks. And so some of the things that I know that the teams here have worked on that have been incredibly important include making housing resources accessible across the city, especially when we're talking about how do we have more racially diverse and equitable services being distributed across the city. You have helped us with creating a framework for communications for our frontline workers, especially at the airport. You have helped to make sure that we make our city services accessible for our transgender and gender nonconforming communities. Not only that, you've also continued to help us evolve in terms of our entrepreneurship and e-commerce digital skills training programs across the city. So again, I just want to say thank you to you in advance for all the work that you have already done. I'm excited to see all the amazing work that you have done through this showcase, but also excited for the opportunities yet to come. Stepping into my new role as city administrator, I hope that we'll be able to continue to focus on some of these efforts to improve services internally, how we do business within the city. But not only that, ultimately doing that in order to improve services for people who are outside, who really need us. Those in our communities who are most marginalized, who really could benefit from an extra hand. That's what, at the end of the day, we're talking about. Public services that have real and deep, meaningful impacts for people who are living out there and need a hand. So again, just want to say thank you to you. I couldn't think of a more fulfilling profession than public service, and this partnership is one way in which we move the dial even further than we could otherwise do ourselves. So thank you very much, and look forward to today's presentations. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Administrator Chu, for your opening and inspiring words. As you mentioned, Civic Bridge is a testament to what can happen when you bring different people together to collaborate on impactful civic challenges and to better serve our residents in San Francisco. We have a great showcase for everyone here today with 4 public-private partnership teams who will share their challenges, their project journeys, and visions for the future. Each team will share their project in a 10-minute flash talk before we turn it over to the audience for questions at the end of our program. For those of you who are tuned in, we encourage you to type in your questions in the comment section of your live stream platform, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce our first speakers, Maria Benjamin, Deputy Director at the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and Ejide Akagbo, Senior Consultant at Slalom, who worked on making access to housing resources more racially equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Good afternoon, Administrator Chu. Jane, thank you very much. I'm going to go right in. We got 10 minutes. I'm getting in. My parents moved to San Francisco in 1956, way before I was born, and they bought their first home here. They were not alone. Black home ownership was in San Francisco was thriving. I joined the MOCD team many years later, and it didn't take me long to notice the lack of Black representation in the city's homeownership programs. Thank you. Under the direction of Mayor Breed, MOCD is prioritizing increasing access to homeownership in the Black community. The city has a number of homeownership resources available through our growing below market rate or BMR portfolio. And the mayor recently announced a significant city investment in the down payment assistance funds targeting the Black community. Through Civic Bridge, we were delighted to partner with the Slalom team to do a deep dive into the barriers to access to homeownership in the city's BMR and down payment assistance programs, and to test our theories and anecdotal information as to what these barriers are, as well as confirm the steps that we are currently taking to increase Black representation in our programs. It's my pleasure to introduce Ejide Okogbo from the Slalom team to discuss and go into the nitty-gritty of the project. Ejide.
Thank you, Maria. First, the Slalom team would like to thank Gloria, Maria, and so many others from the MoCD team that made this possible and contributed to our success in this engagement. Civic Bridge gave us the opportunity to contribute to a challenge that's very timely. As we know, racial equity and particularly the Black experience is very on top of mind currently in society. So this was something that we were very passionate and engaged on for this project. Just this slide, I want to speak through our approach towards the engagement. We broke it down into 3 categories: explore, analyze, and deliver. And exploration was essentially doing a user journey mapping with the MoCD team to really understand the user experience of applicants. The analyze was conducting stakeholder interviews and doing deep data analysis on data sets to better understand the program. And then deliver was putting together our recommendations based on what we had done so far for the 2 previous steps. So initially, whenever we started looking at the data, the first thing that we realized was that income levels of Black San Franciscans are less than other groups. It was something that is just blatantly observed when looking at the core data. But what was particularly interesting is that whenever we looked at the actual data of applicants of the MoCD homeownership programs, we saw that Black applicants actually had similar incomes or even higher income levels than many of the other groups. So that was an initial insight that we identified to show that some of the assumptions we might have come in with regarding maybe lower financial literacy and whatnot were disproved. Additionally, some of the other data points that we identified were Black households had larger household sizes than other groups. And some of the other interesting things we saw, for instance, were Black applicants were less likely to be repeat customers or to apply more than once for the program. So that helped us identify some opportunities to further engage the Black community for the program. So as we did this initial analysis, 3 opportunity areas emerged, and that's how we used to categorize our findings. There were market and marketing, technology and process, and product and finances. Market and marketing essentially is the ability of MoCD to identify, understand, and reach the correct population in San Francisco. Is really about finding that target audience whenever you have a program and a product to reach consumers. Technology and process is about the series of steps, so the timing and the technology MoCD uses to facilitate the application and the closing of a property. This is us really trying to find what operational gaps might exist and come up with solutions to resolve those. And product and finances are the housing options available for ownership and what the financial requirements are necessary to enable purchasing these houses. So think of these as the actual listings from MoCD. So as I go into what our recommendations were, I want to note that many of these recommendations really are validations. These are things that MoCD has identified and already was taking steps towards resolving. And what our analysis and our deep dive really helped us do was to confirm that MoCD are taking the correct steps already to achieve the goal of racial equity in affordable housing. So the first recommendation was about engaging the community. Our data sets helped us highlight that the Black community is very community driven. So we really encourage MoCD to further engage the Black community, Black organizations, and Black leaders, because that will help develop a stronger sense of trust within the Black community. Next was refreshing the marketing strategy. And this is about rethinking about the approaches of how MoCD reaches its community and markets it and advertises the program. So we wanted MoCD to rethink this marketing strategy to make sure that a lot of what is done is very focused and reaches the Black community and takes into consideration how the Black San Franciscans take in this information whenever they're looking for housing. The third is about empowering partners. MoCD is very focused on using partners to further assist and make the program more successful. So these are things like using partners for evaluating applicants and marketing towards the program. So what we recommend here is for MoCD to stronger empower the partners by creating standards that can be consistent across these different community-based organizations. And creating these standards will help MoCD develop better partnership and help MoCD become a thought leader and develop the partner strategy on how to be more effective with some of the steps these partners take on behalf of MoCD. Then the next is viewing existing data. At Slalom, we always encourage our customers or our clients rather to be very data driven. And a lot of the work we did, a lot of the data analysis we did and doing a deep dive into a lot of this, we essentially really want MoCD to continue doing this type of data analysis to further and continuously think about how to leverage the data properly to understand what's going on with the program and use that data to make additional steps and additional insights to drive action. And the last one under the product and finances category was really analyzing the product, the pricing and policy. So rethinking about AMI bands, thinking about what the Black population needs, specifically around housing and when I brought up earlier, household sizes. And taking these steps into consideration will further make the program more successful. To reiterate the point that I said earlier, a lot of these steps are things MoCD has already taken, and our recommendations were really just validations as a way to drive for more equity and affordable housing for San Franciscans. Back to you, Maria.
Thank you, Ejide. Thank you. The Slalom team clearly provided MoCD with new insights, and they provided data-based confirmation of our racial equity strategies to improve targeted marketing and improve alignment with our lenders, housing counselors, and other community-based organizations that are supporting homeownership. In addition, Slalom provided us with this dashboard that we can use to measure our progress and make necessary programmatic adjustments to meet our goals so that families like my own who find work and opportunity in San Francisco know about and can benefit from the homeownership opportunities that the city has to offer. We just want to thank the Slalom team, Eli and Ejide, and the rest of the team for your sincere and generous help in organizing this and putting it together for us so that we can move on and meet our goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Ejide, for taking us on your project journey and sharing with us the impactful work that came out of your collaboration. Next, we have Emmeline Espia, Director at the San Francisco International Airport, and Ian Walker, Manager at Accenture, who will be sharing their work on developing a communication framework for frontline workers at SFO. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's really great to be here today, to be part of Civic Bridge and learn about all of the exciting projects. And it's my pleasure to share a summary of the work that SFO has been doing with a dedicated team from Accenture. So not everyone knows that the City and County of San Francisco owns and operates SFO, one of the busiest airports in the United States and one of the 50 busiest in the world. In 2019, we served 58 million passengers, generated $10.6 billion in economic activity, and had 300 different employers on site supporting 46,000 jobs. 2019 was one of our busiest years, with the opening of Harvey Milk Terminal 1, the Grand Hyatt at SFO, and the new long-term parking garage, all within a few months of each other. But when the pandemic hit, flight operations decreased by over 95%. As essential infrastructure, we have remained open to enable medical workers, cargo, and supplies to get where they needed to go. This means that frontline workers have continued to come to the airport throughout the pandemic, helping to keep the airport clean and safe and ensuring passengers and cargo get safely to and from their destinations. But with the drastic decrease in air travel after the shelter-in-place order, we estimate that as much as 75% of our airline and concession workforce was furloughed. Things happened very quickly, and the airport immediately shifted focus to ensure the social and economic well-being of our private sector workforce. What we learned quickly, however, is that we needed better ways to connect. And this is what led us to apply for the Civic Bridge program. SFO has a long-standing history of addressing the safety, health, and economic well-being of the airport's private sector workforce. In addition to ensuring that our local communities have access to the numerous jobs at the airport has also spent the last couple of decades setting policies and programs to ensure that the airport's workers thrive both professionally and personally. But the pandemic really challenged us in reaching a lot of workers in a short amount of time and with a lot of different information, including our expanded work-life navigation services and general airport operational updates. So our goal with Accenture was to define and redesign the way we connect with frontline workers, both so that they can leverage all that the airport has to offer, but also so they feel more connected to the airport both during the pandemic and beyond.
So in order to provide an understanding of how communication was working in the current state, which we needed to do to be able to make sensible recommendations about where to go next, we both constructed a survey to reach over 400 of the frontline workers throughout the whole airport family. And we were then able to conduct face-to-face, although remote, but video interviews with 8 of those employees. We're also able to get some of our team members on site in the airport itself to meet people in their true environment, to understand their commentary in the context that it belongs in, and to be able to see how they really work day to day and where their information is truly coming from. And to be able to really make use of that as best we could, we also conducted research with industry experts who have the knowledge of aviation and how similar problems have been solved at other organizations. But I don't want to just tell you what all of our interview subjects told us. I'd like to show you.
At the very beginning, I just want to ask, like, how are you?
You know, I'm happy. Like, it's a great place to be. And I love what I do and I love where I'm at.
I definitely like run around a lot, just, take care of my kid, try to pay my bills just like any normal person. And I would say, I'm a solid representation of average worker.
If you want to know what's going on at SFO, where do you go?
In terms of information regarding the actual airport, we actually don't know much.
Like, we don't get communications necessarily from the city.
There's not too much information that gets delivered to us.
So I do go on the website periodically. I won't say regularly, periodically.
Yeah, but honestly, I'm not going out of my way to find out what's going on. Not if it, not if I don't know how it's going to affect me.
Ni siquiera sabía de esas ventajas porque nunca las han dejado saber. Nosotros en el trabajo nunca los han ofrecido como ayuda para cuidado de nuestros hijos o programas de ayuda para la compra de alimentos.
Some kind of connection at the airport. I would have been like, hey, do you know who, can you help me figure out who the right person is to talk to? But I don't really have that person. So it's almost like you avoid contact with anything that has to do with the airport. Coming from a third-party company than actually working as, the airport, you want to bridge that gap because you can't do everything by yourself. You're gonna have to bridge gaps. You're gonna have to build relationships.
We need to rewrite the book.
So in our survey, we were able to reach a much larger number of surveys than previous similar efforts had, in part due to the great generosity of the City and County of San Francisco in helping us to offer an incentive. So a program of gift cards for people who participated in the survey and also in the interviews. We learned through conducting the survey that referrals were a very important way that people found out about the survey itself, and a full 25% of respondents found out about the survey through other people who knew first. And it started to give us an inkling that the way that information spreads in the airport is not in fact top down, and that there's a complex web of relationships that is spreading information, and that what we needed to do was to use that flow to our advantage instead of trying to work against it. We found that most respondents reported that they wanted communications to be sent by either email or text or both. An overwhelming majority of employees preferred those methods. And so we were able to synthesize our approach into 6 fundamental principles around which the future communications plans of SFO should be structured. So to use the example that I gave earlier, that we were able to get people to participate in the survey by offering the gift cards. Number 4, incentivizing people to opt in. The incentives don't need to be that large. People want to get involved. And we're just need to give them a little nudge. We thought at the beginning of this program that we were trying to tackle the so-called digital divide, that there were workers, frontline workers, who did not have regular access to cell phones, smartphones, email, internet. And we learned that the problem was actually more subtle than that, that access to the technology is ubiquitous, but the flow of information is often through word of mouth and informal chat groups that are organized by the employees themselves, and nothing that is being done top down. But that there are a few key information champions who act as conduits for information and who have great reach. So most information is flowing through a relatively small number of people. You need to be careful not to over communicate so that people don't become desensitized to messaging and think that these things aren't relevant and start to tune everything out. But at the same time, under communication, people just aren't getting the information in the first place. As I mentioned before, the level of incentives that it takes to get people to participate, it doesn't take much. People are already mostly there. So Emily?
We see our next steps as ongoing and iterative. We definitely want to develop tools and mechanisms that can operationalize all of Accenture's recommendations, their findings, their aha moments. We've looked at implementing more formalized texting mechanisms, and we've developed a smartphone app that will expand to the private sector workforce. course. Regardless of the tools, we know that we have to very closely monitor effectiveness and assess what is and isn't working so we can iterate and improve our strategies so we can ultimately reach our goal of all frontline workers feeling more connected and integrated with the airport. And with that, I just want to say thank you to the dedicated team. Here is a photo of all of us. A huge shout out to everyone at the Office of Civic Innovation for making this project possible, to the talented team at SFO for addressing this challenge, and an enormous gratitude to Accenture. They committed a whole baseball team to this project. We had 9 very insightful, careful, and caring Accenture team members working on this project, and we're truly grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily and Ian, for sharing your amazing work on communications, something that is incredibly important as we all move collectively towards COVID-19 recovery. Next, we have Maceo Person, Director at the Office of Transgender Initiatives, and Elle Waters, Accessibility Product Manager at Adobe, who will share their work on creating strategic communications for transgender and gender nonconforming communities.
Thank you so much, Jane. I appreciate it. I'm going to start us off with just a quote from one of our will be meaningful to you.
If we can work with trans communities to find the right language and effort for intersectional approaches to good access to healthcare and education and preparation for both providers and residents and citizens in the city, we can take those lessons learned and apply it to racial equity work at large and cross-cultural work at large. And let's work together with those other organizations. So it's not just racial equity work, but it's racial equity and SOGI work together, right? We have a bigger impact that way.
So this project is with the Office of Transgender Initiatives and Adobe in attempts to support and amplify their communication strategy for the transgender, gender nonconforming community. So we'll start with some introductions. Maceo, if you want to go first and introduce OTI's team.
Yeah, I am so honored to be a part of this and so thankful for this Civic Bridge program, first of all. And I want to, I'm just so excited to introduce my colleagues because this has truly been a team effort among our office. And so our incredible director, Claire Farley, and our communications associate, Pax Ahimsa Gethan, have really played a huge part in also developing the projects in this. So I just want to give a thank you to them. And a big thank you to Adobe as well, as you all have been so generous and just a pleasure to work with. So.
Thank you, Maceo. For the Adobe team, we had a pretty diverse group. Christy is a social media manager. Kevin is a senior manager of public relations. Jackie Chang is a software quality engineer. And myself, Elle Waters, I'm an accessibility product manager. So that was one of the benefits, I think, of this when approaching this challenge. So Maceo, maybe you can talk a little bit about the background and the challenge that you were facing.
Yeah, so we know that trans and gender nonconforming communities face an incredible amount of barriers as well as social and economic inequities. One example of this is that we've learned that in San Francisco, trans and gender nonconforming people are 18 times more likely to face homelessness than other San Franciscans. And that's really significant. We also know that trans individuals often face discrimination and mistreatment and disrespect when going to seek general services. So in result, more than half of TGNC people, trans and gender nonconforming people, in a national survey put off seeing a doctor to avoid mistreatment because they can't afford it, or because they don't want to be mistreated. And this is sort of the context in which we live. And the challenge that we have is that there's a big mistrust or lack of access to regular services. So we are really asking, how can our office support city departments to appropriately communicate city services to trans and gender nonconforming community members and become more welcoming? And then the other piece that we had is how can OTI put together a communication strategy to efficiently and effectively communicate city services with broader community?
So when we're looking about how we wanted to approach this problem and really tackle this challenge and meet it, we saw it as two distinct kind of workflows for our project. One was when we're looking at helping support city departments, We wanted to conduct some stakeholder interviews and create a community survey to understand what some of those gaps were in being able to support city departments' work with the TGNC community. And then on the second side of that, we're looking at the community themselves. These individuals, how are they getting this information from OTI and others? And so we worked to create a public relations strategy and to analyze and enhance OTI's already existing social media communications strategy. So very quickly, I'll go through some of the things that we did during this project in order to be able to tackle that. So the stakeholder interviews, one of the wonderful things that we discovered is that OTI has incredibly deep and established relationships with a lot of partner organizations. So we interviewed 6 different individuals who work on behalf of transgender and gender nonconforming communities in the city and asked them lots of questions to understand what the gap was, how the community that they served and the individuals that they saw were faring under the pandemic, knowing that we had all these other challenges previous to the pandemic that these communities were at risk for. So we got a tremendous amount of information from these individuals who are really experts in the field, and that helped us shape our survey. So we created a survey with 40 questions, a little about general information about the participant, about COVID-19 testing and vaccinations, and about mental health and mental health services. We published it in English and in Spanish, and we got 208 participants across the Bay Area. And very quickly, I'll share some of the findings. One of the things that we noticed is out of 181 responses when asking how would you rate your own mental health, 42% of all participants said that their mental health was either somewhat poor or poor, which is somewhat to be expected given all of the things that people were going through last year. However, what was noticeable to us that 67% of the participants who were 24 and younger said that their mental health was somewhat poor or poor. So even a harder hit to the younger group in this community. And then when asked, why haven't you accessed any of the low cost or free mental health and wellness services, out of the 88 responses that we got, 2 very remarkable categories kind of surfaced. One is lack of education. Individuals didn't know they were available. They didn't know how to access them. They didn't know if they could afford them. But then 46% of the responses were about whether or not they felt safe, whether or not they felt trusted and respected and understood by the provider. And so I think we really determined this creates a lot of opportunity for bridging those communication gaps. And then finally, in this particular survey, how can the city improve in connecting you to available resources? I thought this quote was really poignant because we had a lot of opportunity for people to just share in free form what their responses were. I work for LGBT older adults and would like to take this opportunity to speak for them. It's been really hard for most of them to get access or even be part of anything because they don't have internet access. I wish there was a way they could participate or keep informed about programs, maybe send a mailer with wellness activities or something like that that they can see. So these things then helped us. Maceo is going to talk a little bit about the outward communication strategies as well.
So some of the things that we worked on or sort of developed more is looking at our tools. So social media is an incredible tool for us to engage with and to talk with our community. With Adobe, we got the slide deck of best practices around social media work and how to communicate with community. We also finally made official sort of our Trans-City SF social media sites as well. So now we see the blue check mark on our Twitter account and our Instagram, and we developed a social media calendaring tool. One huge thing is that a memorable moment is that San Francisco, like we said earlier, is a leader for the country. And that's so important right now to communicate to our people, both what our services are for our trans and gender non-conforming community, but also as the country is continuing to push a record number of anti-trans legislation. We keep seeing anti-trans violence. It's so important for us to show our country that a different reality is possible and that San Francisco is that light, that we are building services for trans communities, and we're making a city that is for all, for truly for all.
So let's talk about our key insights, Maceo. Some of the things that you felt like you discovered and that I discovered and our teams when working together came across in looking at these different activities. So one of the things I'll say is I think that it's really important for us to recognize that we know community is important with certain groups, but when you're suddenly taken out of that opportunity and to be able to meet in person and that social distancing, it really becomes that much more profound, the impact on that community with regards to trust and knowing that you have a connection to a larger group.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that trust is one of the key issues in order to make services accessible for trans and gender nonconforming communities, and that can be fragile. So embracing every way that you can build that trust is important, which includes representation both in digital content and in your communications, but even deeper than that, and having representation in your staff, as well as having a deep and real relationships with the organizations on the ground that community members are connecting to.
So speaking of representation, maybe we should talk a little bit about what's next for OTI, because you have some really cool stuff that I want to be able to have time to share.
Sure. So one of the pieces that we are wanting to do next is build a media and communications toolkit to support departments when communicating in the press or in the media about transgender nonconforming people, about issues regarding sexual orientation and gender identity, to have more tools available for our folks. Another one is to develop an internal sort of social media communications roadmap to sort of plan out the work that we want to do throughout the year or in the future. And then another piece is that we have been working pretty closely now lately with the COVID Command Center. And so we want to continue that work to deepen the relationships that trans and gender nonconforming organizations have to the COVID Command Center, and to making sure that we can all be a part of the work and the solution in eliminating the pandemic. And
so on the screen, you want to talk a little bit about what these flyers are, these posters, this artwork?
So one of the examples is that at one point, a lot of our organizations that we work with were asking us questions about the vaccine. How are they going to get it? How will it impact trans people specifically? So we knew that we needed to engage trans people in a specific way around this. So we put together a town hall. We worked with organizations who are serving trans communities on doing a vaccine drive. And the other piece is making sure that people feel represented in the ongoing communications around our COVID relief effort. And so this included this pride campaign that the communications team at the COVID Command Center made that features really like LGBT community and a really big and real and profound part of San Francisco and who we are in our vaccine efforts.
That's awesome. So
in terms of next steps for the folks that we are working with and sort of for everyone, one of the big key things is to get trained. One thing that we know is that we need to equip our frontline staff with the tools and the information that they need, so they will feel confident in serving our communities, so that people can learn to engage with TNC community both digitally and offline. Again, like both building those relationships over social media, but also developing those relationships on the ground. Partner with trusted organizations that support trans and gender nonconforming communities, understand the impacts of intersectionality and discrimination for our communities. I think one thing that is very clear, right, is that these issues have affected Black, Indigenous, Latinx, people of color, trans communities differently, and often more deeply. Build relationships. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah.
So we'll send this to you. There's tons of extra work that people can dive into. A lot of it has to do with partnering with organizations like OTI. Maceo mentioned representation and how much it matters. This is another quote from the survey. One time there was a trans guy working the site. He was checking people in. I felt so safe and happy to see another trans person involved in the process. Please employ more trans people because it means a lot to see them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maceo and Elle. It's so wonderful to hear about the amazing work this project team has done towards better communications for the TGNC community. And now we'll turn it over to our final presenting team, Alex Vaughn, Digital Equity Manager at San Francisco, Babu Neelam, Salesforce Engineer, and Florence Chung, Senior Product Manager at Salesforce, who will talk about their work on developing an entrepreneurship and e-commerce playbook for low-income residents. Over to you.
Thanks, Jane. So yeah, it's my pleasure to present on our project and all the great work that we've done. It was a very collaborative effort between multiple city teams as well as a great contingent from Salesforce. Let me start by just introducing everybody. Next slide. Yeah, so this is our city team. We had so many colleagues around the city from different departments chiming in and chipping in on this. We have folks from Civic Innovation, of course, folks from my department, the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, as well as a number of colleagues from the city's Office of Economic and Workforce Development who brought in expertise from small business development as well as technology training through the TechSF initiative. Next slide. And, you know, we also had a wonderful contingent, maybe more than a baseball team, you know, compared to the SFO project. So a number of folks from Salesforce who came in from design backgrounds and product management and project management backgrounds, folks with experience in training, as well as e-commerce and retail sales. So definitely strength in numbers here is something we believe strongly in the Bay, and a lot of expertise coming into this project. So next slide. So I thought I'd just start with just giving some background and history on how this project came to be. This really started with some community needs assessment, a citywide needs assessment that we did to develop our digital equity strategic plan. You know, based on the data that we collected, we found that the digital divide and digital literacy were now becoming barriers for folks in lower income communities from obtaining, you know, good paying living wage employment. So, you know, not too surprising there, but we knew in order to develop a good program and good training, we needed to do much more community engagement to see what community members, you know, wanted to see on this topic. So we brought in a research fellow last year. He did a really great job in talking to community members, doing long form interviews and focus groups in public housing sites with the reentry population. And what he found was that by far, folks were much more interested in learning entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship and e-commerce skills compared to any kind of digital skills training for any particular job. Folks were, you know, really excited about the opportunities that e-commerce could provide as far as working on their own schedules, working on things that they're actually interested in rather than, you know, just plugging into a particular job. They talked about relevance and applicability. They mentioned how, you know, in the past they took trainings for a particular job, didn't get that job and forgot all the skills that they learned. Whereas with e-commerce, they could take the training and just start working on their micro business or their e-commerce enterprise or e-commerce operation right away. So, you know, they're really excited about that. And there was also a really strong community element as well. I think we heard that from earlier presentations. Folks wanted to learn these skills, not just for themselves, but also to help out their neighbors and their friends and their relatives in the community, folks who have, you know, existing businesses and helping them grow their online presence. So yeah, that was just really exciting to hear, and it was a little bit unexpected. So based on all this input, we circled back with some of our partners in community-based organizations who are already doing some digital skills training, and we just wanted to see what they thought about it. And you know, we found that they confirmed there was really high interest with their clients on this issue, on this topic, and some were already trying it. But there was consensus that, you know, everyone would benefit from having some kind of centralized resource and some kind of centralized expertise to really develop out this programming, because many digital skills trainers, you know, that are, you know, working in community don't really have experience with e-commerce. This is a very new topic for many of them. So yeah, that's pretty much how this project came to be. So, you know, with that, you know, we passed on this project challenge to our friends at Salesforce, you know, with the goal of having them design an entrepreneurship and e-commerce digital skills playbook for our low-income communities. And the idea was that this playbook could be used by any training provider, community-based organizations, or even city agencies to deliver their own programs and classes on this topic to their own clients. So with that intro, I'll pass it on to our friends at Salesforce, Babu and Florence to walk you through the project.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Alex, for the introduction. So I'm Babu Neelam, and I'll be presenting our project journey on behalf of the Salesforce team. Coming to the project, how did we go about achieving our goal? At a high level, we had 3 phases: the scoping, and then design, and then the delivery phase. During the first phase, which is the discovery and the scoping phase, we wanted to understand the problem we are solving, the target audience, and such. And then during the design phase, we went ahead and then designed the playbook. And after that, during the delivery pilot test, we tested the playbook and playbook content by presenting to a few CBOs and then incorporating the feedback. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, Florence, could you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, during the scoping, previous slide. During the scoping phase, actually, we interviewed a lot of community-based organizations who are really the users of this deliverable. And we also shared our learnings with and brainstormed our learnings with the city team to keep everyone aligned on the project. And huge thanks to the city team, for lending their expertise here. We also adopted after this, we also adopted iterative mindset to condense the scope early on so that we can make progress on the project. Yeah, next one, please. Here are some key takeaways from our interviews from the community-based organizations. I won't go into each of these in detail, but if you based on the real-life stories insight that we received, you can see how we presented the real-life story of Phil here in our playbook. Similarly, we have other real-life stories too to keep the participants inspired throughout the playbook. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, so we developed the playbook. Now, how do we know it's in line with the expectations of the trainers? We presented the playbook to a few community-based organizations again, who have focus groups and pilot testing to proactively gather the feedback from them. And from there, the key takeaway from here is that test your deliverable early enough and keep yourself relevant with the final expectations. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, here you can see the card sort technique that we used to gather the feedback during the focus group sessions we had with the community-based organizations. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, the previous one. The previous one. Yeah, here are some. Next one. Sorry. Yeah, here are some key takeaways from the feedback sessions again during this phase, like from the focus groups and the pilot testing. Again, I'm not going through each of them, but let me show you some feedback that we received on hands-on activities that is incorporated into the playbook. Yeah, next one. Yeah, so you can see that these are kind of hands-on activities that we recommend throughout our playbook. So here I'll hand over to Florence, who will go over the project deliverables. She's a key project member from the Salesforce team who helped deliver the project at a very high quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Babu. So 2 key deliverables that we have from this project. The first one is the instructor's guide, which is in a PDF format. Basically, it helps the instructor prepare for the course. I'll show you a sneak peek of what that looks like. And the second deliverable that we generated was a digital entrepreneurship playbook in the slide deck format, and also show you what that entails as well, too. So first off, in our instructor guide, as I mentioned earlier, it's really to help the instructor understand how to prepare for the course and what to expect as well too. We cover course objectives with a course overview, what's contained within the entire course, some teaching recommendations as well, and some guidelines on how to best prepare yourself on teaching the course. Within the instructor's guide, we also have a very modular approach with all the lessons as well too. So with all the lessons that we have in the Google slide deck, we put them in an outline format here in the instructor's guide. And the reason why we made it very modular was so that instructors could change up the order of how they want to present the material as well too. For instance, we interviewed a gentleman at Goodwill, and he mentioned that he has a 6 to 8 week course solely on customer service. So what that gentleman could have done is take his course and supplement our material, or just substitute our customer service course with his. His is a lot more advanced than ours as well. Regarding the digital entrepreneurship playbook, which is basically the curriculum that the instructors will be teaching in a slide deck format, we also have a cover slide. So every single section is very clearly demarcated as well too. Every single slide has a lot of illustrations, so it's very engaging. Within each individual section, as Babu mentioned earlier, there's also activities as well. So the students feel very engaged. They can also verify, the instructors can also verify if the students have learned anything within the course material. Within the deck, we also have ability on how to select an online platform as well too. There's tons of online platforms currently out there on the marketplace, and we guide the student through which would be the appropriate marketplace to select based on this offering that they're planning to sell, whether it be a hard good or a service offering. Even though there's a lot of material on the slide deck, and even if the information might be brand new for instructor, the instructors don't have to worry because in a majority of the slides, we also have key points that the instructors are supposed to be focusing on and what they should be highlighting within the classroom, and also a talk track as well too. Towards the end of the course, we have a sample exercise. Basically, students would be launching their own Etsy marketplace, and we go step by step on how to launch that marketplace. We have screenshots from Etsy explain exactly what they should be doing. And even though a student may not be offering their business on Etsy, still the material and the content that they're developing will be very, very applicable to any other online platform that they do choose to select for their business. And on behalf of the Salesforce team, we hope this digital literacy entrepreneurship playbook will help both current and aspiring entrepreneurs create their online presence. I also want to share with you a quote from one of our partner feedback, Jerry Mixon from Digital Mobility. He really sums up really well how important businesses are. He says that small businesses and home businesses is going to be huge as we go through this transition. This playbook's a great blueprint that we can freestyle off of to bring this content into our own communities. With that said, I want to pass it over to Alex Bond for some closing thoughts.
All right, thanks, Florence. Yeah, I'll just close by giving a sense of our roadmap, where we're going from here. So yeah, right now we're putting the finishing touches on all the great work that Salesforce did. And once this is ready, our plan is to post it and make it available through TechSF's website with some of their other learning material. We'll also be pushing it out to all of our grantees across both community development and workforce development, and encouraging them to build this into their own programming. Finally, we want to organize a pilot cohort to go through this training and give us some additional feedback to continue to improve this training. And this pilot cohort, we want to include both community members as well as training providers, because many of these community-based digital skills training providers said e-commerce is brand new to them, and they felt like they could benefit from going through the training themselves in order to teach it to others. And yeah, based on all that feedback and all of those pilot tests, we want to continue to iterate and improve this product. Some ideas that we're kicking around is incorporating more local examples and even some success stories from our own programs, right? So folks from the community who've been able to start their own e-commerce operation, we want to include them in success stories for kind of the future cohorts. And we're also looking to expand scope and maybe incorporate more e-commerce or digital or social media platforms that would be more applicable to like non-native English speaking audiences, because we know like the Chinese community and the Spanish speaking community, they might gravitate towards other e-commerce or social media platforms, and we want to make sure that they feel included in this as well. So those are just some ideas. And yeah, I want to close with just giving a huge shout out and my appreciation to all of our community partners for their contributions to this project. So we've had such a diverse group of community partners lend their input, give us feedback, join these focus groups and interviews, and we really appreciated all their insight, and without them we couldn't have developed this final product. So really appreciate everyone's support on this project. So thanks everyone.
And thank you, Alex, Fabo, and Florence, for sharing your work on developing this amazing playbook. We're so excited to see this roll out and really help build up entrepreneurs in San Francisco. So we heard a lot about these impactful and innovative Civic Bridge projects, and I hope the audience is as inspired as I was about what can happen through public-private partnerships and how we can drive civic change when we work together. Unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A, but don't worry, we'll be sending out a post-event email to our attendees, and you'll have an opportunity to indicate your interest in learning more about our Civic Bridge projects. So definitely keep an eye out for that survey, which will be coming to you soon. And I recognize that we are at time, so let me end this celebration event with big gratitude to our Civic Bridge cohort who spent months working together, thinking creatively, and dedicating their skills and expertise to drive civic change here in the city. So thank you again to our project teams. Thank you to our audience for tuning in, and have a great day, everyone. Stay well.